Hello and welcome to India Tonight. I'm Shibani Gharat, and the big story that we're tracking right now is, of course, the fragile calm in West Asia is about to end. Yes, the fragile calm in West Asia appears to have broken down once again. US President Donald Trump has declared that ceasefire with Iran is over, raising the specter of fresh escalation in one of the world's most critical energy-producing regions. Markets have reacted swiftly. Brent crude has surged above $76 a barrel for the first time in 2 weeks. The fallout is already visible across global financial markets. Now, Dow has slipped more than 400 points, pointing to a weak start for Wall Street. Back home, Indian markets also came under heavy pressure. Nifty slumped more than 2%, registering its sharpest intraday decline since March 23, 2026. US President Donald Trump has once again reiterated that there will be more attacks on Iran. Trump has even said that US aims to take over Kurg Island. Let's listen in.
Look, we're not attacking at the highest level. The highest level are the bridges, which we can knock down. I would say in one day we knock down every single bridge in Iran. There's not a thing they can do about it. They're electric manufacturing facilities, right? They're electric plants where they make their electricity there. We will, if we have to, we'll take them out. I don't want to do that, but if we have to, we'll take them out. They have desalinization plants. We'll take them out if we have to. I hate to do that. That's probably the one I would like not to do least. We attacked Kurg Island last night. We knocked out a piece. I said, don't touch the oil, because maybe we'll take over Kurg Island.
Now, from an economy like India, where energy imports remain a key vulnerability factor, the questions are immediate and pressing. Could oil prices head even higher? Will geopolitical uncertainty keep global markets on the edge? And what does this mean for inflation, interest rates, and investor sentiment? Joining us today to decode this development, we have Ashutosh Karnatak. He's the former director of Gas Authority of India at GAIL. Then we have Johita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian, and we have Pramit Chaudhuri of the Eurasia Group. Thank you so much for joining us today on India Tonight. Let's begin this conversation with you, Mr. Chaudhuri. How long till the conflict will end, and how much should we believe on the fresh threats which Trump has issued on Iran today after calm for like just a couple of weeks?
So we've seen this plot before. We've seen Trump issuing blood-curdling threats. We've seen the two sides exchange kinetic action against each other. We've seen ships be hit in the Hormuz. And then suddenly Trump says, oh, actually, everything's all right, and I'm going to go back and work out a deal with the Iranians. I think that despite concerns in the markets, this is more or less a return to that story. Why? Because one, we have both sides have actually been reasonably restrained. As Trump himself said, we're not hitting top level. America's not hitting top level targets. Iran hit just 3 ships, was careful to hit a few American bases, but didn't go beyond to hit oil and gas infrastructure in Saudi Arabia or UAE. And I think we'll see this peter out after a while. Second, the original memorandum of understanding that was signed between the two governments was an unusual diplomatic document because it had virtually no details. It was a very vaguely worded language, very open to interpretation, which is exactly what diplomats would normally not allow. But in this case, given the nature of how Trump functions, he didn't allow that negotiation to take place. So there was always going to be a problem about when the sides differed about the language, about the timing of the MOU, that they were going to go back and start fighting with each other again. If you want to put it this way, we are negotiating on the fly after the MOU. The MOU is the beginning of the end, I would argue, rather than the end of the conflict. And we will negotiate by a combination of conversations as well as fighting. Finally, the key driver, however, for the original MOU, the American unwillingness to use its military power to reestablish its dominance of the Persian Gulf, an Iranian government that sees itself in a very good position. The results of this conflict have actually been quite good for it. Still stand. Those are not going, that hasn't really changed. But I think, let's say from the Iranian perspective, they're a little unhappy that, for example, the fighting in South Lebanon continues, that they have been able to move 58 million barrels of oil out of the Hormuz Straits, but that there's no buyers for it because the Americans are still not lifted sanctions. So at the end of it, the Iranians are saying, well, we didn't quite get the deal that we expected. And that's partly because of the vagueness of the MOU.
Johita Basu, over to you. Your reaction on, what specific military thresholds would actually trigger a direct conflict back again in the region, according to you?
Well, I think it is not just upon Mr. Trump to decide whether the US will be going to war again. The intensity of what we saw initially. First of all, there we are looking at the allies over there, particularly the Gulf countries. They're extremely unhappy with the restarting of the war. And that is what Iran is going to do, whatever missiles it has left with. The minute the missiles, whatever we have seen, I would say, if I can use the word posturing, perhaps it is more posturing than actual military action. And the thing is, you see, and if US escalates any further, Iran is going to hit out at the Gulf countries, UAE, and and if Trump is talking about taking out the.
Right. Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am, but the posturing is in fact costing the world quite a bit because, we have seen a jump in, of course, the crude oil prices. And, we saw the markets react very sharply back home as well. Over to you quickly, Mr. Karnatak. I know that towards the end of March, the oil prices had hit a really big high. But how long can the oil market sustain this uncertainty in the region?
See, this is a time when, because oil prices are very sensitive to the Strait of Hormuz. What indication it has given by the Mr. Trump statement that Hormuz is still a critical factor, and it has got a direct impact on the oil price. So that's why today we have seen that it has gone to $78. So this is going to happen till the time it is this issue is not resolved properly. And it is called a JOPA, Zone of Possible Agreement. Until the Zone of Possible Agreement between the Iran and US is established, this uncertainty we are going to see maybe for a longer time, maybe 2-3 more months.
Right. Now, we also have Mr. Arnab Das. He's a global market strategist who is joining us on ET Now for this debate on India Tonight. Arnab, thank you so much for joining us today on India Tonight. And we have seen sharp reaction after Trump's comments on how, the conversations are now off. The negotiations can go on the sidelines. But, he may strike Iran soon. And the markets have reacted sharply to that. Your reaction to that and, what will we see in the days to come?
Well, thanks for having me. Yes, look, I think, the underlying issue here is that the ceasefire has been fragile all along. Iran, it seems to me, clearly, wants to demonstrate that it has control over the Strait of Hormuz. Freedom of navigation is no longer there. It's a choke point, and Iran is making that point. And of course, the U.S. And I would suggest most of the rest of the world would be, would want to try to restore freedom of navigation. And the point that was just made that Iran can retaliate and has demonstrated capacity several times in this conflict and even earlier that it can hit out at, quote unquote, U.S. allies in the Gulf Cooperation Council and in the region, that is very much clearly still the case, right? So I think what we can take away from this is that the situation is clearly far from stabilized, let alone resolved. And that, given the 40 or 50 years that the U.S. has been unable to solve the conundrum in Iran, this conflict has crystallized perhaps why, right? Iran has a lot of levers and bargaining chips, and just leverage generally to use, and it is not shy of using that. So I think that is, a challenge for the U.S. It's a challenge for the world. It's a challenge, as has been said, for the commodity market, financial markets generally. So I think where are we going from here? I think it's hard to tell, but I suppose, the president, despite his inimitable style, is going to be somewhat constrained because he doesn't want the price of oil to go through the roof, the price of gasoline in the United States during the summer driving season, ahead of the midterms, right? So I think I expect we'll see more of this posturing, as it's been called, more of this conflictual behavior, but it probably won't be allowed to get out of hand because the constraints the midterms impose.
Right. Back to you, Joyita ma'am, since you also mentioned the posturing of it during, our conversation before this. So the timing and the location of it is happening, whatever Trump said, it has happened in Ankara during the NATO summit. Help us understand now that, this announcement in Ankara around the NATO summit, how particularly, will it impact the NATO unity, going forward?
If you're looking at the NATO unity, whatever is happening in Iran, all the countries, NATO countries, they are talking in terms of there has to be peace. You see, when I'm talking about posturing, you have to understand one thing, that when Trump is talking about taking over Kharg Island, the only way he can do it is by boots on the ground. And he doesn't have that kind of troops in that region. How does it, so whatever he's talking about, and as the previous panelist also mentioned, he is not enough, the midterms are coming up. So you see, he will be shooting a bit here and there and all, but he cannot afford to go into a full-fledged war. And apart from that, there are restraints on him and constraints on him imposed by US Congress. There are problems in that side as well. So when you are looking at in this context, the thing is, you see, what is interesting is this is realignment with Turkey. Now, Turkey was they had been, but at the same time, we have been seeing, Mr. Trump being very, very positive towards Erdogan for some reason. And maybe it has a lot to do with, perhaps he's hoping in terms of Erdogan exercising some influence that he has over in that region to restrain maybe the Hezbollah, that side, because there is some talk about that, some kind of funding and stuff that is coming in from that area. So, but let us see how it goes. If you're talking about NATO allies...
At this time, 80 Iranian positions have been hit so far. This announcement happened during, the NATO summit in Ankara. Now, how does this impact? Let's go over to you, Mr. Chaudhuri. How does this impact Turkey's delicate diplomatic position also with Iran?
Well, I don't think Turkey need to worry. Turkey doesn't need to worry too much about this per se. This is not a NATO action. I think for Turkey, as a lot of other Middle Eastern powers, they're looking already at a post-American Persian Gulf, if you wish, that over the medium term, you will see American power dwindle, or American even interest in the Gulf dwindle. Partly because North America is now the oil and gas hub of the world. America produces almost as much oil as Russia and Saudi Arabia put together right now.
Sorry to bother you. Sorry to interrupt at this point in time, but I would also like to add that it was just yesterday that Trump declared Turkey as a friend, and he also said that when he went against Iran, went to war in Iran, in West Asia, the other NATO allies, taking specifically a dig at France and UK, he said that they didn't back US. But, he considered Turkey as a friend. So I would also like your reaction on that.
Well, Turkey definitely didn't help the United States in any military fashion either. Nobody joined the United States. It was a war that America went into at largely, if there was any country that had an influence on it, it was Israel. No NATO member was involved. Yes, American bombers from Incirlik base in Turkey may have been used, but that would be passive support at best. And Turkey didn't criticize it, but nor did any other NATO member, or very few of them. So I don't think Turkey was a major part or a player. What I think Trump was very happy about with Turkey right now is, one, that Turkey is actually buying American weapons, signing a very large deal with F-35s at a time when many other NATO members, especially other European members, are now rejecting American weapons because they don't trust the United States anymore. But I think for any long-term Middle Eastern policy, you're looking at three centers of power: Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. With countries like Turkey, maybe in Egypt, definitely in Israel, acting as sort of a second ring of powers that has influence on the balance of power that will emerge regionally. So Turkey will become a much more important country. So will, incidentally, India. But present, while it's trying to stay neutral, is getting closer to Saudi Arabia on that front. But it doesn't really want to get involved between those three countries. So Turkey is playing a sensible game, very similar to what India or even is playing, which is stay on the fringes and carefully watch what to see happens at the local level. But that's a more medium long-term game.
Right. Well, on this note, it is time for us to slip into a very short break. Just stay with us, all of you. We'll be right back after this very short break on India Tonight.